Nothing grows without being fully present where it is planted. The seed does not choose its season, and neither do we. But what we can choose is to believe that where we are is not an accident. It is not a pause in the story. It is the story, and it matters. This present moment, in all its simplicity or struggle, has been allowed for a reason. You may not yet know that reason. You may never fully know. But you can choose to bow your heart before it and treat it as sacred, because what you do with now shapes what is possible in later. People are always searching for miracles, for signs, for answers, but they often miss the most important truth. The miracle is already in motion, right now. It might be invisible to the eye, but it is not silent to the soul. This is your invitation to remove your shoes, figuratively speaking, and honor the ground you're standing on, to silence the voices that tell you you must rush forward or run from your past, to realize that God has not forgotten you, and He does not dwell only in far-off destinies or big victories. He moves through the present, through what seems too plain to matter, too quiet to notice, but those are often the holiest spaces of all. If you could truly see what is unfolding around you, if you could catch even a glimpse of the invisible orchestration of grace happening in this moment, you would fall to your knees in awe, not because the ground has changed, but because you finally saw it for what it was. And so I remind you again with all the urgency of love, right now is holy ground. Treat it as such. Respond to it with humility, with faith, with attention, because the divine is not coming, it is already here. Right now is holy ground. These words are not metaphorical sentiment or poetic exaggeration. They are truth in its rawest and most urgent form. The present moment, the one you are in at this very instant, is charged with divine significance. We are so often deceived into thinking that holy ground exists only in grand sanctuaries, in ancient temples, or during mountaintop revelations. But the sacred is not confined by bricks or rituals or geography. It steps quietly into the ordinary and transforms it from within. This moment, as you breathe and read these words, is not neutral. It is not random. It is alive with divine intention. Too often, we live in the shadows of yesterday or the anticipation of tomorrow, forgetting that eternity is not some distant realm. It is always now. The present is the place where the eternal pierces the temporary. It is where heaven brushes the edge of your life in the smallest, stillest ways. You may not feel it. The world around you may seem completely unchanged, but unseen forces do not require your awareness to be at work. Something holy does not wait for your recognition to be present. The ground upon which Moses stood didn't suddenly become sacred when he saw the burning bush. It always was. He just finally noticed. In the same way, your current moment holds possibilities, revelations, and transformations that are waiting not to appear, but to be perceived. Every breath you take in this moment is a miracle clothed in invisibility. Every second is an opportunity to say yes to something that has been waiting for you to awaken to it. You may feel as though your life is too common, too wounded, or too routine to carry any sacred meaning. But history and eternity both testify that the divine prefers humble vessels. The manger was not a palace, yet it held the infinite. The cross was not majestic, yet it became the doorway to redemption. If such ordinary spaces could become holy ground, then your present moment, no matter how overlooked or painful or still, can be infused with purpose too. We do not earn sacredness by achieving or understanding it. We step into it when we become still enough to recognize what's already there. To treat this moment as holy is to stop resisting the now. It means to accept with reverence the people, the pain, the waiting, the confusion, the joy, whatever is currently before you, and realize that this is the soil where your transformation is rooted. Nothing grows without being fully present where it is planted. The seed does not choose its season, and neither do we. But what we can choose is to believe that where we are is not an accident. It is not a pause in the story. It is the story. And it matters. This present moment, in all its simplicity or struggle, has been allowed for a reason. You may not yet know that reason. You may never fully know, but you can choose to bow your heart before it and treat it as sacred, because what you do with now shapes what is possible in later. People are always searching for miracles, for signs, for answers, but they often miss the most important truth. The miracle is already in motion, right now. It might be invisible to the eye, but it is not silent to the soul. This is your invitation to remove your shoes, figuratively speaking, and honor the ground you're standing on. To silence the voices that tell you must rush forward or run from your past. To realize that God has not forgotten you, and He does not dwell only in far-off destinies or big victories. He moves through the present, through what seems too plain to matter, too quiet to notice. But those are often the holiest spaces of all. If you could truly see what is unfolding around you, if you could catch even a glimpse of the invisible orchestration of grace happening in this moment, you would fall to your knees in awe. Not because the ground has changed, but because you finally saw it for what it was. And so I remind you again, with all the urgency of love, right now is holy ground. Treat it as such. Respond to it with humility, with faith, with attention, because the divine is not coming, it is already here. The door in front of you looks ordinary, but it is sacred. That is the paradox we often miss in life. We expect the extraordinary to announce itself with grandeur, with bright lights or thundering voices. We think transformation should look dramatic, unmistakable, and public. But the truth is, most of the doors that change our lives forever do not look like doors at all. They look like conversations we weren't planning to have. They look like small, repeated decisions. They look like quiet nudges in the heart that no one else can see. And because they appear ordinary, we often ignore them, waiting for something more obviously significant. But the sacred rarely demands attention. It waits, it whispers, it hides itself in the daily and asks only for the courage to knock. What you may be looking at today, this opportunity, this challenge, this calling, may not appear impressive. It may not promise fame, comfort, or applause. In fact, it may look like a risk. It may look like something inconvenient, too quiet to be meaningful. But that is precisely why it holds such power, because it tests the heart. The most powerful doors are those we enter not because they guarantee success, but because they are the right doors. The ones that call to something deep in us, even when logic protests. The sacred always respects your freedom. Freedom is ended. It never forces, never manipulates. It stands patiently at the edge of your awareness, asking whether you will trust what doesn't yet make sense. Consider how many sacred things began in obscurity. A carpenter's son, a prayer in the wilderness, a letter written in prison, a widow's last coin. None of these looked important to the people around them, but all of them were doors, portals through which grace and glory entered the world. That is what this moment may be for you. It may look like an email, a phone call, a decision to forgive, a step into something unfamiliar. But make no mistake, hidden behind what looks common is something eternal. You do not need to understand what waits on the other side. You simply need to recognize that it is not ordinary just because it is quiet. What stops most people is not the lack of opportunity, but failure to recognize it. They are waiting for something spectacular, and in doing so, they walk past what was sacred in disguise. How often have you looked back on something small and realized it was the beginning of everything? The conversation that changed your direction, the decision that set your soul on fire, the closed door that was actually a redirection. We rarely see the holiness in real time, but we are always invited to treat it as if it's holy, even before we know for sure. To walk through the door in front of you is not to guarantee clarity. It is to say yes to a mystery. And that is what faith really is, not blind belief, but the willingness to trust that the ordinary may be hosting the extraordinary. You do not need more signs. You do not need more confidence. You need reverence. Reverence for the now. A reverence for what appears small. No, Reverence for the sense within you that something is calling, even if the voice is faint. The door may not be loud, but it is alive. And here is the secret few talk about. Sacred doors rarely open wide at first. They usually crack open just enough for your heart to lean in. Just enough for your faith to grow legs. Just enough for you to decide. If you wait until the whole path is visible, you will miss the door. Because doors of destiny are not meant to give you control. They are meant to awaken your courage. You must risk walking through what looks like nothing in order to receive everything. This is how the sacred works. So look again at your life, at today, at the decision in front of you. Look again at what you dismissed as routine or too small to matter. It may be the very thing that shifts everything. The divine hides not to trick you, but to see if your heart is listening. Will you treat the ordinary as sacred? Will you say yes to the door that seems too plain to matter? If you will discover that what you thought was just another step was actually the beginning of a sacred journey. Because the door in front of you is not just a door. It is holy. Your past pain has purpose. This statement is not meant to romanticize suffering or minimize the weight of your wounds. It is meant to offer a deeper, more enduring truth that nothing you have walked through is wasted. Pain, when seen through the eyes of eternity, becomes more than just a memory of sorrow. It becomes a part of your transformation. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every silent night when you felt forgotten was not the end of your story, but a shaping force within it. You were not abandoned. You were being refined. The fire that burned you also forged you. What hurt you did not destroy you, though it tried. What broke you did not bury you, though it may have felt like a funeral. The truth is that you are still here, and the pain that once threatened to take your breath away is now part of the breath that makes you stronger. So often we look at our past with shame or resentment. We want to forget the hard seasons, push them out of sight, pretend they didn't happen. But what if those very seasons were the soil in which your strength was planted? What if the pain was not an interruption to your life, but a preparation for it? Pain opens our eyes in ways comfort never can. It strips us of illusion, teaches us humility, and awakens the parts of us that only grow in the dark. Without pain, we would not know the depth of healing. But without sorrow, we could not recognize joy when it arrives. Pain does not come from a cruel hand. It comes with permission, often unexplainable in the moment, but always purposeful in the end. There is something sacred about the scars you carry. They tell a story, not just of suffering, but of survival. They are evidence that you have lived, that you have felt deeply, that you have walked through the valley and refused to stay there. You may not yet see what your pain is producing, but rest assured, something is being built from it. The pain is not pointless. It is the classroom of wisdom, the training ground for compassion, the birthplace of calling. The greatest souls are often those who have suffered most, not because suffering is noble, but because it refines us into people who can carry weight, truth, and grace. When you view your pain only as a curse, you close the door on what it can become. But when you begin to see it as part of your formation, you open yourself to healing. You start to see that the very things you wished away were shaping the person you were meant to be. The waiting taught you patience. The rejection taught you worth. The betrayal taught you discernment. So, the loss taught you gratitude. None of these lessons are pleasant, but all of them are powerful. And if you allow them, they will lead you into a deeper life than ease ever could. This is not to say that pain is good in itself. It is not. It is not. Pain is a result of brokenness, of things not being as they should be. But the miracle is that something good can come out of it anyway. That even the worst chapters can be used by a higher hand to bring about something meaningful. That the tears you cried in secret are seen, collected, remembered. Nothing is forgotten. Nothing is useless. You may not yet have the perspective to see how it all fits together, but one day you will. And until that day, hold on to the truth that your pain has not been in vain. You are not the same person who entered the storm. You are wiser, more tender, more resilient. You carry a strength that cannot be taught, only lived. And now, with every step forward, you carry the sacred knowledge that your wounds have not weakened you. They have deepened you. They have deepened you. You are not a victim of your story. You are the survivor of it. You are the vessel through which something beautiful is still being written. Your pain has purpose, not because it defines you, but because it has prepared you. The next door you walk through will not be walked through lightly. It will be walked through with the wisdom of someone who knows what it costs to get here. And that wisdom, born of pain, is a gift not just for you, but for the world you will now reach. Faith is the key that unlocks this moment. Not intellect, not perfect circumstances, not visible proof. Faith alone has the power to activate what is waiting just on the other side of your obedience. You see, the most important movements in life rarely begin when everything makes sense. They begin when something in your spirit stirs before your mind can catch up. Faith does not require a full explanation. It requires a full surrender. It means choosing to step even when the path is hidden, to trust even when the evidence is invisible, to believe that something is happening even when nothing seems to be changing. That kind of trust is not weak. It is one of the boldest, most courageous things a soul can do. It dares to say yes to something greater than fear, greater than doubt, greater than human reasoning. Faith does not mean the absence of fear. It simply means fear does not get the final word. You may feel uncertainty, hesitation, or even anxiety as you approach the threshold of a new decision or calling. That is natural. But faith says, even though I feel this, I will not be ruled by it. It looks at the mountain and climbs anyway. It looks at the storm and rows anyway. It looks at the silence and listens anyway. Why? Because faith knows that something deeper is going on beneath the surface. Faith believes in what cannot yet be seen and lives as if it were already true. That is how miracles happen. That is how destinies unfold, not through perfect clarity, but through consistent trust. So many people wait for a sign before they move. But often, the sign comes after the step, not before. It is when you act in faith that heaven responds. The miracle doesn't come to those who stand still in fear, demanding proof. It comes to those who walk forward even while trembling. The waters did not part for the Israelites until their feet touched them. The provision did not come to the widow until she poured what little oil she had. The walls did not fall until the people circled them in faith. Each of these moments required the same key, faith, and that key turned something invisible into something undeniable. You are standing in a moment that could change everything, and the only thing you need to activate it is faith. Not a perfect plan, not a guaranteed outcome, just a heart willing to trust what it cannot yet see. Faith honors the unseen. It gives weight to whispers and reverence to quiet convictions. The world teaches you to wait until something is proven, but the kingdom operates differently. In this divine economy, faith is the currency. It is the language of heaven, and when you speak it, when you live it, you unlock doors that would otherwise remain closed. This does not mean every outcome will go the way you want. Faith is not a tool to control results. It is a posture of surrender. It says, even if I don't understand, even if I don't receive what I expected, I will still believe. That kind of faith does not depend on blessings to be sustained. It is sustained by the very presence of the one you trust. And in that presence, even unanswered prayers become sacred. Even delays become part of the design. Because faith transforms how you see time, how you see obstacles, and even how you see yourself. It awakens your identity as someone who is not just surviving life, but partnering with something eternal. When you begin to walk by faith, you realize that many of the limitations you believed were fixed were only illusions. The doors were not locked. They were waiting for you to turn the key. You had the authority all along, but authority without belief is powerless. Faith does not make you more deserving. It makes you more available. And availability is what allows purpose to flow into your life. Right now, you may not feel ready. You may not feel strong. But the beauty of faith is that it does not depend on how you feel. It depends on what you choose. It depends on what you choose. And if you choose to trust, if you dare to believe that what seems like an ordinary moment is actually pregnant with divine possibility, then you have already turned the key. You have already unlocked the shift. Everything may look the same on the outside, but something eternal has already moved within you. That is the quiet power of faith. It does not always roar, but it always transforms. So step forward. Speak the yes. Live the belief. Because faith is not just something you carry. It is something that carries you. And it is more than enough to open what has been waiting for you all along. You are not being summoned by chance, but by destiny. There is a deep and ancient intention behind the moment you are standing in right now. It is not random. It is not luck. It is a divine appointment written into the fabric of your story long before you ever knew to look for it. Too often, we dismiss the significance of our circumstances, believing that life is a scattered series of events we're merely reacting to. But the truth is that you have been called, not casually but specifically. You are not an accident wandering through life, hoping to stumble upon purpose. You were born with it into your soul. The season you are in, the people you've met, the battles you've faced, and the dreams that keep tugging at your heart, they are not coincidences. They are signals from destiny, drawing you closer to the reason you're here. There is something about being called that often feels too heavy to carry. We doubt ourselves, we question the timing, we look at our flaws and ask why we would ever be chosen for something important. But destiny does not call those who appear perfect. It calls those who are willing. No. The call is not based on your perfection, it's based on your potential. The voice that calls you forward knows your past and your struggles and still whispers, a go. That whisper is not weak. It is sacred. It is an invitation into a greater version of who you already are. You don't have to become someone else to answer it. You have to become more deeply yourself. Destiny is not about performance. It's about alignment. It's about recognizing that your life was crafted with a purpose only you can fulfill, and your presence on this earth is needed right now. Now. So many people live as if their lives are waiting to begin. But destiny does not wait for the perfect moment. It shows up in the middle of imperfection. It often arrives disguised as inconvenience or discomfort. But when it comes, you will know. Something in your soul will stir. For you will feel the undeniable pull to rise, to act, to believe. And that pull is not your imagination. It is the quiet summons of purpose calling you forward. You may not feel qualified. You may not feel ready. But destiny is not about feelings. It's about timing. It's about timing, and when the time is right, the call will come. It doesn't need your credentials. It needs your yes. You are not being called into something random. You are being drawn into the next layer of your assignment on earth. Your pain, your past, your passions, they all converge here. Destiny redeems what you thought would always hurt. It reclaims what you thought was lost. It doesn't waste anything you've lived through. Every chapter, even the messy ones, has been building toward this moment. And now, the call is in front of you. Not a call to rush or force anything, but to awaken. To realize that the weight you've felt, the restlessness you've carried, the fire in your chest, they all point to something more, something divine, something that is not optional but essential. You don't need to understand the whole picture to take the next step. You just need to trust that the call is real and that your life matters. You need to remember that destiny does not shout. It whispers. It speaks softly, so you will slow down enough to truly listen. To truly listen. You won't always see where it leads, but you will sense when it's near. And when you do, your role is not to argue or hesitate. Your role is to respond. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, because the one who calls you also walks with you. This moment you're in may feel uncertain, but don't let uncertainty make you forget the truth. You are not here by mistake. Every breath, every step, every encounter has brought you to this point for a reason. Destiny is not a far-off future you chase. It's a present reality you awaken to. Fun. It lives in your choices, your courage, your willingness to move even when it's hard. So lean in, say yes, follow the whisper, because you're not being summoned by chance. You are being called by destiny. And what waits on the other side of your obedience is far more meaningful than anything you could imagine. Your next chapter begins with obedience, not with applause, not with understanding, not even with a feeling of certainty, just simple, quiet obedience. That word may sound small or even rigid, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful forces in the world. Obedience is what separates those who dream from those who become. It is not about control. It is about alignment. When you choose to obey the quiet leading in your heart, even when no one else understands it, you step into a rhythm that's deeper than logic and stronger than fear. Obedience is not about blindly following orders. It is about deeply trusting that the one who calls you sees further than you can and is preparing something for you that you couldn't prepare for yourself. Your yes matters more than you think. It may feel like a whisper in the middle of noise, but that whisper has the weight to move mountains. Too often, people wait for clarity before they obey. They wait for the plan to be outlined, the path to be lit up, the support to be guaranteed. But that's not how destiny works. Your next chapter doesn't begin when you understand. It begins when you trust. Obedience is the act of walking into the unknown with the belief that the one who guides you is good and that your surrender is never wasted. It is the key that unlocks the next door, even if you don't know what's behind it. You might think obedience requires strength, but more often it requires surrender. It asks you to lay down your right to control and pick up the courage to move anyway. The stories that matter most, yours included, are not written by those who had it all figured out. They are written by those who listened even when it was quiet. They are written by those who said yes, even when they were afraid. Obedience doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it asks you to stay when you want to run. Other times it asks you to leave behind what feels safe. But every time you obey, something inside you strengthens. Every time you step into the unknown, you are being reshaped into someone who can carry more. Your next chapter is not just about what you'll do. It's about who you're becoming. And becoming often begins with obedience. There is something sacred about saying yes before you see the outcome. That kind of trust moves the unseen. It draws heaven close. You don't need to understand everything to begin. You just need to begin. Obedience turns potential into movement. It takes what is still only a promise and starts the process of turning it into reality. And perhaps most importantly, obedience protects you from delay. So many people postpone their purpose, waiting for confirmation that already came in the form of conviction. If your heart is stirred, if you feel that gentle pressure to act, to move, to speak, then that is the invitation. That is the moment. That is where the new chapter begins. Obedience is often quiet. It rarely brings instant recognition or visible reward, but it always brings growth. And in time, it brings fruit. The work you do in obedience, the seeds you plant, the doors you walk through, the things you release, may not show results right away, but they are doing something. They are shaping the future. They are aligning your life with something greater than comfort, purpose. Purpose. And that purpose is never unlocked through hesitation. It is unlocked through the yes you whisper in the dark when no one else sees. You are standing on the edge of something. Maybe you don't feel it clearly. Maybe you do. But either way, the invitation is the same. Obey. Trust the voice. Trust the pull. Trust that what is calling you is not demanding perfection, only your presence, your faithfulness, your willingness to go even when the destination is not fully revealed. Because this next chapter will not write itself. It waits on your response. And when you take that step, however small it feels, you activate what has been waiting for you all along. Obedience does not end the journey. It begins it. It opens the way for strength to meet you, for peace to fill you, for favor to follow you. What comes next may not be easy, but it will be holy. It will be necessary, and it will be worth every uncertain step you took to get there. So say yes. Step forward. Your next chapter is not waiting on a miracle, it's waiting on your obedience. And once you begin, everything changes.